this is not a surprise, but the Saudis are not particularly fans of the Biden administration. Because remember, the Biden administration came in and they said the adults are back in charge. We're going to have exceptional relationships with people around the world. Well, that's really not true. But yesterday evening, a story broke. The Saudis put out an official statement. Now, I understand that the Saudis are not necessarily the most trustworthy. Frankly, I don't think you can trust any country's official statements, let's be honest. Some even less than others, right? Like Iran and North Korea are at the very tail end of whether you believe them or not. And then there are other countries that tend to be more forthright and honest.
I was in the CIA, and I can tell you, all countries lie, and they lie a lot.
Yeah.
They lie a lot to their own people. They lie a lot within the government apparatus to each other.
They lie a lot, but the response to this accusation has been telling. The Saudi government came out and said that the Biden administration begged them not to decrease oil production by 2 million barrels a day until after our midterms. Now,
I have the letter from the kingdom.
You have the actual letter in front of you. Yes.
I mean, I wish I had the original and autographed by some of the Sheiks. But here's what they say: the government of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia would also like to affirm that clarify that based on its belief, the importance of dialogue, etc., in its continuous consultation with the U.S. administration, all economic analyses indicate that postponing the OPEC decision for a month, according to what has been suggested, would have had negative economic consequences. Essentially, laying it out here, hey, we know you guys in America under the Biden regime were like, can you just keep the oil flowing so that we can fool people into thinking the economy's better than it is for a month? But we're actually looking at the macro picture here in the kingdom, and we don't care. Also, Clay, I think a backhand to Biden.
And this is significant because we impeached Donald Trump for less, right? I mean, publicly asking for the oil to continue to be shipped so you can parade around talking about how successful your energy policies have been at, by the way, dragging down the price of oil from $5 to still near all-time highs today, because that's what Joe Biden is trying to brag about. Now, he's blamed Putin and the Saudis and everybody else for the cost of your gallon of gas. As soon as the price started coming back down, he said, the reason why this is happening is because of us, right? So everything bad is somebody else's fault. Everything good is our credit.
These lunatics, Democrats, impeached Donald Trump for a phone call in which he raised the prospect of the follow-through of investigation about corruption and law-breaking by Hunter Biden, which was all real.
Yes.
They say, influence peddling is not illegal. Money laundering is. Tax evasion is. Millions of dollars going to a family that is buying influence in the Democrat regime that they do not declare that they are money. That is all illegal. So Trump was actually talking about illegal activity that was going on, or rather was at least alluding to illegal activity. They, as we know, impeached him for that. They actually did it.
And Trump asked these questions about countries that are directly involved in the most important places of American interest in the world, China and Ukraine, Russia. As we were talking about yesterday, it's not as if Hunter Biden was getting paid by Costa Rica and Malta, right? We're talking about places that have direct and strategic geopolitical interest at the absolute apex for the United States government.
The two countries that would probably want more than any other country, and because it's effectively with the Ukraine, it is the battlefield politically and now militarily, but the battlefield of Russia-Ukraine. That's the whole...
Yes.
That's what... So you're basically talking about a Ukraine, Russia, and Chinese influence buying scheme to the then vice president's son and now actual president's son. I mean, Clay, at what point does everyone just recognize? I think we're already long past it. These people just have no principles. They'll make any argument, doesn't matter if it contradicts the argument they made yesterday, whatever works in the moment, whatever makes them feel emotionally validated in the belief that putting this cognitively, incapable buffoon in charge of the country has not had really negative consequences. There is not a single thing. If somebody said to me, hey, I'm going to, just as an exercise, I'm going to pay you, a bunch of money to go out there and make the case about where the Biden administration has really excelled. I would actually not be able. I mean, even if I was doing devil's advocacy, I would say the Biden administration has only excelled where it has failed to get what it wanted. That the best thing you can say is where they've been blocked. Thank God for that.
I think, Buck, they were going to try to argue that they had solved COVID, and the Joe Biden trial balloon of saying COVID is over was so roundly rejected by his own base that they had to walk that back because his base is not willing to accept that COVID is no longer a threat in this country.
And I do think that there's a silent wave of rage out there about what was done to us by particularly those of us who live in blue states. Like you in Tennessee, you got a little bit of it when you flew and everything else. But what the Biden regime did, it was a year ago that they were firing people, starting to fire people, I should say. They're still doing it here in New York a couple of weeks ago, firing people from their jobs, telling them they're a public health menace. Clay, there were people who were openly, and they were all Biden voters, Biden supporters, and even some Biden officials, who were openly advocating for the denial of health care to people who refused to get the shot because they were such a risk to other people. This was monstrous. I know it's not showing up in the polls, and maybe this is wish casting on my part, I'll admit that. But every time we talk about this, Clay, you know this, our lines are lit up for the next hour on people who are furious. And a lot of them are in New York and California and New Jersey. They're furious about what happened.
Well, this is why I think we may see it in Christine Drazan, who we're going to have on next hour. If she gets elected as the governor.
Let's ask her about this. I want to know if she thinks this is part of it.
Certainly Tiffany Smiley, who I saw last night on Hannity, she did a fantastic job. She has put Washington in play going up against Patty Murray in a way that it's never happened before. I personally don't think it's a coincidence that both Christine Drazan and Tiffany Smiley are moms. And I think there still are a lot of outraged moms over what happened with COVID shutdowns. And, Buck, we'll play some audio for people when we come back about this Saudi allegation, because it is an allegation from the Saudi government. But we do not have a good answer coming from the Biden administration. We'll play that audio for you when we come back, because it sounds like they are trying to avoid entirely that conversation, which gives the idea of what the Saudis are saying, the ring of truth. Jonathan Farrow at Bloomberg had White House Economic Council Director Brian Deese on, and he kind of let him have it, and this is not a denial. Listen.
Brian, the Saudis themselves said this morning that the U.S. requested a 1-month delay to the OPEC Plus output. I wonder why that would be. Brian, can you tell me whether you did ask the Saudis for a 1-month delay to that decision? Are they telling the truth?
Look, we clearly communicated our views to OPEC members that we thought it was short-sighted for them to take the action that they were contemplating, and they announced. With respect to the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, this was a calibrated decision to address the real issues in the market. We talked to U.S. industry last winter. We identified that there was about a 1 million barrel a day gap between what they were producing this winter and what they said that they could get production to by late this fall. That 1 million barrel gap was what we calibrated to make the decision on the use of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And people should feel confident that the Strategic Petroleum Reserve continues to be an asset that we can deploy to address our economic and national security needs. That's always what has dictated the president's decision-making on this, and that's what will dictate his decision-making on this going forward.
Brian, you didn't answer the question, so I'm going to ask it again. I'm going to share with you and share with our audience the quote from the Saudis this morning. The government of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia would like to clarify that based on its belief in the importance of dialogue and exchange of views with its allies and partners outside of OPEC Plus regarding the situation in the oil markets, the government of the Kingdom clarified through its continuous consultation with the US administration that all economic analyses indicate that postponing the OPEC Plus decision for a month, according to what has been suggested, would have had negative economic consequences. Brian, again, it's a really straight question. Did you ask the Saudis to delay that decision for a month? Are they telling the truth or not?
Look, I'm not going to get on air and disclose private conversations that members of our administration
the Saudis have shared it with us. You've got the opportunity to say it's true or not. Is it true or not?
What I will say clearly is that the communications that we've had with OPEC members and continuing have been based on our assessment of the economic circumstances of supply and demand in global oil markets.
Who is that journalist? By the way, that guy got wrecked.
Yes.
Who is that journalist?
I believe
Brian Deese was a little Biden Quisling, but
Jonathan Farrow. I might be mispronouncing his name.
Good for him.
Bloomberg.
I was just, wow. There's like journalisming going on.
Actually asks a question, doesn't allow the question to be dodged, keeps going back to it. So when you hear that, Buck, this is what I saw this morning. So I saw the initial Saudi allegation, and I thought, okay, it's the Saudis. They sometimes, like many representatives of countries, don't always share the truth. But when you combine what the Saudis said with that response, it makes me think like the Biden administration definitely requested a delay
100%.
until after the midterms
No
for
doubt.
political benefit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, totally.
And that guy got wrecked.